Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel Mexican Excellence. My name is Citlalli and I have a very special guest with me today.
Hello, I'm Huitzilyolotl.
And today we are going to get into our experiences with the Mexica movement and the before and after, why we left the organization. So this is a conversation that we wanted to share with everyone on YouTube and whoever watches this. It's been 4 years. We left in 2017. So we feel that it's time now to speak on this issue because we've wrote statements about it. They circulated. A lot of people have read them, but we feel ready to express, share these experiences with you that we could not write about. There's so many things that we wanted to share with everyone. And me personally, I used to be a spokesperson for Mexica Movement. So a lot of my videos prior to today, you'll see that I'm like, Citlalli from Mexica Movement, Citlalli from Mexica Movement, because I was there for 20 years. And so as a public person, as a spokesperson of the Mexica Movement, I wrote my statement, it's shared publicly, but I feel an obligation to my community, to my people, not only to make this video, but to document in my own words, my reflections on the Mexica Movement and why I left the Mexica Movement. So tonight, to start the conversation, we're both going to be answering the questions. We have about 4 or 5 questions that we're going to answer, and it's something that we are sharing with you. Also, for people that are activists, that you might find similar traits, similar, toxic philosophies that are still being used in certain organizations. So we hope that us talking about this openly and sharing with everyone these details, that it helps you on your journey of activism, of decolonization, and that you're able to point out the red flags that a lot of the times we didn't see. And so we hope, the bigger idea of here of this conversation is that hopefully you learn what we went through and you don't have to repeat the same lessons that we had to learn.
So I'm from Orange County. I grew up in Santa Ana. I'm third generation Mexican. So that means that my my great grandparents were from Mexico, and most of my grandparents' parents are from here. And I think for the longest time, I think as early as a child, I was always I was always searching, not, I was always searching for identity in the sense of, I remember the first time I was like questioned, like I guess my Mexicanness was being questioned was I was like 7. I moved from Anaheim to Santa Ana, and I didn't learn Spanish yet, and people would come up to me and speak to me in Spanish, and I didn't understand what they were saying, and then I'll say, oh, I don't speak Spanish, and then they go, oh, well, you're Mexican, or like they go, oh, so you're white then because you're born here or your parents were born here, and I was like, no, I'm Mexican, and then they're like, no, you're white, and I was like, okay, that's weird, right? So then I started to learn Spanish just to like not be questioned all the time, right, by my own peers, like kids that are, that most of my friends or my peers either had parents from Mexico or they were born in Mexico, so they saw me as like white because I didn't speak Spanish, right? And then I think when I was like 10, my grandpa died. But before that, like my grandpa was like, he was mixed. Like he was mostly like mixed, but he was like blue-eyed, red-headed Mexican. And I was always wondering like, why does he look like that? Like, why does he look white? Right? Like in my mind at 10, I was like, he was born in Mexico. He speaks Spanish, so like, why does he look white, right? And well, not really understanding like the complexities of Mexican identity or nationalism or nationality. But in my mind, I'm like, Mexicans are brown, right? We speak Spanish. And my grandpa was the only one that spoke Spanish and the whitest one. And I was like thrown off by that. And then one time my mom was like, oh, it's because he's French and Spanish. And I was like, wait, he's Mexican. Like, how can he be like, you're like European? So I just kind of, so at 10, that just kind of like just threw me in this like loop. And I remember like in high school, I was just like reading about like, different like Latin American countries like Mexico, El Salvador, like Peru, like Argentina, Chile, everything. And also the same thing over mestizo, or Spanish and indigenous, always have African roots, and just all these things, right, about identity. And I started going to powwows in high school. I had a friend, she was Cherokee, so we would go to powwows, and I guess I was just looking for identity. I didn't really find it there. I mean, powwows are pretty cool, but I was, you know, it's more like cultural, like you could just buy like cultural things, and um, but it wasn't like teaching me anything about myself. And um, so I went to college. I mean, college. I majored in Chicano studies, and well, I think the that wasn't my first major, but I think the turning point was I watched the um, Chicano walkouts and Citlalli, and that just like blew my mind. Like it just kind of, I was just like, I don't like, it was just such a powerful thing to watch, where you see these students like fighting for their rights and fighting for who they are. And I think one sign that said brown is beautiful, and like I didn't I didn't expect it to like hit me, but I just got like really emotional, like just reading that sign. They didn't even like, no one even talked about that sign, but they, you know, they just had it like as they were like protesting, and I was like it just made me realize like, wow, like I think it made me realize my own self-hate, like how, you know, I wish I was lighter, I wish I had like green eyes, you know, just all these things that, you know, we wish when we were younger. And that just reminded me of like my sister, who's like darker, and to me she was like really beautiful. And like people say, oh, like she was like Selena or whatever, right? But like she had like long like black hair, like just very beautiful. But yeah, even she would tell me, oh, like I don't like my skin, like I think I'm ugly. And so it just like hit me, like I was like, wow, like our people are so beautiful, and we don't even like realize like how beautiful we are, because we want like whiter skin, right? And so I think that just kind of made me think like, wow, like this needs to be taught, like we need to like learn these, like we need to know our history. And this was before even like pre, you know, like Mesoamerican history and like indigenous. It's just more like just current history, or like modern history, like the Mexican experience in the U.S., right? Because, you know, when I was growing up, um, just my family has been here since like early, like late 1800s, early 1900s. They went through a lot of issues, like Operation Wetback, where my grandma was deported when, even though she was born here in the 1930s. My grandma went through segregation, where in Orange County, where Mexicans and white people were separated, and, you know, just um, my grandma was here for speaking Spanish in schools. So all these things that my family like went through, and I didn't. I always wonder like why like that was happening, or a lot of my family grew up in like Mexican neighborhoods in Orange County. So like Orange, like my mom grew up in Almadena, my dad grew up in Anaheim, but it was called La Fabrica. I have family in Placentia, but it's called Atwood. So I was like, why is it called all these like like little nicknames? And then I realized like, oh, like these were like segregated neighborhoods. Like they were mostly that were more like communal, like people like all like got together from Orange County and had like parties or whatever. So it was very unified. And then I guess it kind of went down to where it was like mostly like gangsters, and like gangs started developing, and now you have like all these like gangs that have these names that were historically Mexican neighborhoods. So all these little things that I kind of had in my mind, and I always like wonder like why these were like happening, or why that was like it. So yeah, so I think even in college I was still just searching for identity, and again like we're taught this whole like mestizo mentality, how we're like, oh, we're the colonized and the colonizers, and you know, all these things. And then so then I graduate and I go to grad school like a year later. And, so after I finished, I like took a year off, then I went to grad school, and then still, yeah, I think I was just kind of again still searching for identity. Um, like I know, you know, it didn't like sit right with me, like, oh, like we're mestizo, we're mixed, but I still didn't feel confident in, you know, saying I'm indigenous, even though I knew I was at that point. It was like, well, again, like I'm mixed, I don't have the culture, just all these things that we hear people saying, like, oh, like I didn't grow up in the community, I can't claim a culture that I don't even know or I didn't grow up in. So so around that, so I think it was my first semester in college, grad school.
What year was this around?
Jesus. So I got my bachelor's in 2008, so like 2009, and um, so yeah, so I mean, I already had like, you know, like I was kind of developing my own like political ideology, also trying to figure it out, like, you know, what is like, what should, you know, like what does it mean? Like, I know like Chicano was about like, you know, being like conscious of our issues and wanting to like fight for issues, and you know, I didn't have like I didn't know like how to do that. Even though I wanted to do that, I didn't know where do I go to participate in a kind of activism, right? I mean, I had like Mecha and like in college, but I didn't. I didn't join because I was also working, so I didn't really have time to be at school. And then when I went to grad school, I had like a lot of more time just to like hang out and kind of like see, to get involved in activism. And so the way I encountered the Michigan movement was interesting because uh, it was like almost like three different ways, like kind of like three different occasions. So with the first one, I had two friends. They were like, "Oh, like we met this guy. He was selling like indigenous, I don't know, things, or what do you call it, like
Art
art
or
and jewelry and stuff,
mm,
different things like that." And he was he was literally selling them at like next to like next to a bar, right? So my friends were at this bar and then they saw this guy like selling his stuff next door, and then they're like, "Oh, like you should meet him. Like I think you get along." So at that point, my friends already knew like, okay, like I think you like this stuff, right? Like so they had an idea. And then so I met this guy who was really cool, and then he goes, "Oh yeah, you should check out his website." But it was a Mexican movement, it was Mexica Uprising. And so I read it, I'm like, okay, you know, it's interesting. And then maybe like days passed. I was gonna like really like go back to the website, and then like Mexica Movement popped up first. And then so I just kind of, okay, that sounds interesting too. So I just you know click on it, and then I started just reading like just all these things, and I was like, wow, like it just kind of put everything in perspective. I think because I already had like a foundation of Chicano studies to a certain extent. Um, like it was still limited, but I had just a certain extent where it just kind of like took what I knew like further. So for example, like you know they say, oh, we're not mestizo, like because we're not gonna be identified by like rape, and like for some reason like that just like it just clicked. I was like, yeah, like that's true. Like why are we identifying with like a Spaniard or like you know like with the colonizers? And just the way they were like it was more the writing was more like blunt. It was more like in your face, and you know I mean it could be like harsh, or it could be if like if people don't understand like history and then they read it, they're like, whoa, like this is like vulgar, this is like too much, like you know, so it might turn people off. But I just I automatically got it right away. And so that was like so that was one incident, and then another incident. Uh, I think it was like Mexican New Year at this point, so like by like February, I think. Um, this so one of my classmates, he's from East LA, but he had a flyer. He's, oh yeah, like Mexica Movement has it's Mexica New Year, and they're gonna have like presentations and like Santa Ana. And I was like, oh, like I live there. It was like a Centro, and then so at this point I was at CSUN at Northridge, so it was kind of like interesting how you know my classmate from East LA had this like flyer from Santa Ana, right? So I'm sure you guys are probably promoting in LA or something.
mhm.
So I was like, okay, it's like fine, I'll check it out. And so it was like so my professor was like, oh yeah, I'll give you this extra credit if you guys go to like a cultural event. So I picked, that's the one I picked. And then so it was in Santa Ana, and I went, and that's why I saw Citlalli for the first time, and I saw like Olin um and other people. And so I remember I don't know if I told you this, but I wrote a paper on or like my reflection on you, because it was about
You
like
did not tell me.
it was
I want to read it.
it was like yeah, like what was you know like what was it about? And I wrote about like how she wrote this poem, and she was reciting this poem, and she talked about how like our identity is like left in the ruins or something like that. And I was like, wow, like that just like it really hit me. And um yeah, like it just made sense. Like I think I was like, you know, I felt like my whole life I was searching for like my identity and like what does it mean, and like how to identify. And then you have these, you know, group of people like saying like, yeah, like we're indigenous, and you know, it doesn't matter like if you're mixed, or you know, like you know, there's reasons why like we don't feel connected to who we are, right? And so it just all like clicked for me. And then what I think it was another incident how I met you guys. I think that was I can't remember right now, but so yeah, it was kind of like it all kind of culminated into all like the same like time frames. And um, so I just started going to you know I started following like the website, and just had like different meetings or different like lectures, or yeah, mostly lectures. So I started just going to the events, and I probably didn't talk to her maybe like I don't know, maybe like a couple times I went, maybe a second time. I think when we first interacted with each other, there were so I went for a lecture, and then there were I guess he like said, never mind, we have, it was during the time of Arizona and ethnic studies was being attacked, so they kind of just switched and like, okay, we're gonna make posters to go to Arizona. And so at that point, I already knew about it too, just in school, and a lot of my classmates were gonna go as well. I didn't go because I was in grad school, and I mean those grad schools was intense. So I was like, well, I can't just go off to a weekend in Arizona, right? But so yeah, so I think I was kind of like, okay, I think I was like, maybe this is the group where I could like get involved. Not, I didn't mean like, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I wasn't enjoying them or not, but I was like, at least I could like participate in like activism and like things like that. Cause I didn't really I didn't really know what that meant. Like I didn't know what that consists of, um, but I think I have a lot of classmates also like that were in like activism and in like indigenous like activism. So it all kind of like it's all coming together, right? So so yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it was just like Mexica Movement was attractive because it was like what I was always looking for, right? Just whether in terms of my identity, in terms of like to be involved or in activism, and so yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like I felt like it was like the right fit at that moment.
Absolutely. And just so that people know, we're not going to use all the names of people from the organization. It's not important. I think what's more important is the experiences that we're going to share with everyone. As far as myself, I came across the Mexica movement. Well, let me go back a little bit about myself. So I grew up in Southeast LA. I grew up in everywhere, Cudahy, Bell Garden, South LA, Compton, all over. And I grew up, with a lot of the gangster, because a lot of people in my family are like the Pachuco style of gangster culture. And then I grew up with more of the rancho culture. And so growing up, not knowing who I am, like, and then it was interesting because it started making sense to me like in the sixth, seventh grade. I noticed that my mom would always call white people Americanos, right? And every time we would go where there were white people, she would say, "Oh, I'm just Americanos. There's a lot of Americanos." And so that resonated. I'm like, okay, well, white people are Americans. And then when I started asking her about like my identity and like just started asking questions like, who am I? Am I Chicana? Am I Mexican? My mom was like, oh, pues, you're an American. Eres Americana. And obviously, my mom sacrificed a lot to be here in this colonial country. So in her mind was like, no, like you're American, like don't try to be Mexican. Like it's painful. There's a lot of suffering. Like you're American. Like that's the way she introduced it to me. But then I remember going back to in junior high when I was getting a little bit more conscious. It's like, wait a second, if I'm American and I'm reading these American history textbooks and all the people that are American are white people, then am I white? Like, is that what being an American is, being a white person? And that didn't hit, it didn't settle with me. And then also going to Olvera Street, we went there a lot. We went to the swap meet. We went to listen to Pepe Aguilar and Vicente Fernandez, like growing up in that culture of like, mariachi music, banda music. And especially when I was Cita Danzantes in Olvera Street, I just remember feeling like this, I can't describe it, like this energy, like this calling, like something very beautiful, witnessing that, watching the danza. And I was just like, no, like something in me was like, no, I'm attracted to that. Like that's something that's in me that's calling me towards that. And so, so I started being a little bit more aware of that. In junior high, I started writing poetry. Again, I didn't know my history. I was very passionate about ending racism. I had my counselor going into high school, the ninth grade. He was a Jewish survivor of the Holocaust. And I remember in the ninth grade, he went to our classroom. He talked about the Jewish Holocaust. We went to the Museum of Tolerance. And so I was very aware of racism, of how people can hate each other. And I remember I entered a poetry contest about the racism and I won. And I was just like aware that there was something bad and that hate was bad and that people shouldn't hate each other based on their religion or their culture or their skin. But I had no idea that my history had all of this, like tragedy. It had a lot of beauty. Like there was so much being kept from me. And I'm never gonna forget, like I had a social sciences teacher in 8th grade. His name was Mr. Rivera in Gates Middle School, Huntington Park. And I'm never gonna forget this. He had us all draw a Mayan hieroglyph, and he's like, choose one, you know, that stands out to you. We're gonna draw it and we're gonna put it all over the school. And I was like, wow, like it was beautiful, right? And I'm never gonna forget him. He would always wear huaraches. He was always speaking Spanish. Even though he was a social science teacher, he was very, very intentional with how he interacted with us, with how he would talk about being Mexican, Chicano. And so I remember drawing the Mayan hieroglyph, and we all posted them all over the school, like down the where the locker rooms were and all that. And so I remember, wow, this is really beautiful, right? And so I'm learning that. I'm learning about the Jewish Holocaust. At this point, I was identifying as a feminist. I started getting into veganism because, of course, I wanted to end the injustice for animals. And I would go to PETA protests. I was like 14 years old or something, going to the PETA protest. They were protesting the circus in Huntington Park, the Vargas Brothers circus. I was there. And so there, I was already like on this mood, right? Like, no, like we gotta make this world better. We gotta end racism. We gotta end animal cruelty. And that was the philosophy that I had. And then there was this one evening, I was a singer to a punk band, and my lyrics at that time, we performed at a church in Huntington Park, and I remember singing this song, and the song said, "Somos iguales aunque seamos ilegales, somos iguales, mexicano, chino, japonés, no importa, somos iguales." And so that song said, we're all the same, even though we're illegal. Like we're all equal, even though we're illegal. And, you know, I was jamming out to the song, and because I felt that's what I knew, right? I was like trying to speak for human equality and talking about that we are all the same people. And it was at that event that one of the members of the Mexica Movement student high school club called Chicano, Mexicano, Mexica Empowerment Committee, they came up to me and they're like, hey, you know, like that's a cool song, but you should learn more about your history. You know, and they gave me the flyer, and they're kind of like, you know, little punks about it, you know, like kind of check me. But whatever, like I was too cool too. And I was like, all right, cool, I'll check it out, you know, whatever. And so then I go home, I open the flyer. I think I have it here. One of the flyers. And I'm never gonna forget, you know, it said Mexican, not Hispanic, not Latino, learn your true history. I don't think I have it here. Oh yeah. Well, let me see. And so anyway, so it looked like this. You can see that. It looked like that. And so I was reading that and I was like, what the heck? Like, because at that time I was using the term Latina, but I remember identifying more like Chicana or whatever, Mexicana. But when I read that, I was like, wait a second, what are they talking about? And then I was reading the flyers, and then it said like recommended books to read. And I kid you not, like part of me was like this is crazy. Like, why, if this is true, I should have known this. Like my mom's Mexican, my grandma's Mexican, like we should have been taught this. So then I remember going to the CMEC, it was called Chicano Mexicano Mexican Empowerment Committee Club. It was on a Tuesday. It was held every Tuesday at the high school, Huntington Park High School. And they were talking about, you know, our history, that we have accomplishments, that we had our own languages, that we survived the genocide. And I remember feeling so overwhelmed and just being like, what the heck? Like, I was angry. First, I felt like really critical, like, no, like, I thought they were exaggerating. I was like, nah, like, it couldn't be that bad. Like, these guys are on a trip or something. And so I was really like curious. And so I remember going to the library and looking up some of the books that they recommended. And I remember someone said, you know what, you should read the Mexica Handbook. And I was like, okay, well, what is that? And so this is the Mexica Handbook. This is the second edition actually of it, but they lent me the Mexica Handbook, right? And so the Mexica Handbook, it's all poetry about our history. It explains why we're not Hispanic or Latino. It talks about Tenochtitlan and genocide. It's a powerful book, you know. And I remember reading this book like within a day or two. And then I remember researching the book American Holocaust. And then I remember just feeling angry, like just really like crying, like really angry, just feeling like we've been cheated, like, we've been lied to all these years. But then I was very curious. I was like, who wrote this book? Who is this person that wrote this book? And then they told me, well, if you come, he comes to we had study groups after school, I think once a week, or I forgot, every 2 weeks. The director of the organization, he would come after school to the high school. We would meet at a local park and we would have study groups. So in these study groups, he would talk about different topics each week. And I remember just being like, at first I wanted to know who wrote this book. Why did he write this book? Like, I was very intrigued because I was just like, this seemed like something so powerful that we should have known already. And so that's how I met the members of the Mexica Movement, where the students were high school students that were members. And then I met the director at the after school study group that was held there in Huntington Park, and after reading the Mexica handbook. So all of these things, to me, like, I was already a little bit political, but reading all of this, it just gave me like this new like sense of purpose, a sense of like, okay, like, if this is kept from us, then this must be known. Like, I need to be part of this. I need to do everything I can. Like, I am very passionate about this. We've been lied to. We're the survivors of the biggest genocide. Like, that to me was the biggest push for me, and inspiration for me was like, okay, how do I get involved? What do I do to make this message get out there even more? And so that's how I came across the Mexica movement.
I started so once I found the movement, I started following them. I started going to lectures. I started going to protest, and because I started going like consistently, I think after we started, we had two protests that I was going to. One was about Disneyland. We're protesting the school, like it was like the shootings in Anaheim that were happening, and Disneyland had since Disneyland controls like Anaheim, we thought it was their responsibility to address it or say something. So we're there for like I think like a year. Like it was like every like weekend. And then after that, we started protesting like not Sunday. We're protesting what was that bill? It was the pipe, no, it was like this bill that was in Canada. So it was about like taking more land, water. So we're protesting that in East LA for about I think a year or two.
Oh yeah, DAPL.
DAPL.
Yeah.
So because I was like I was just very consistent. Um, the director and co-director approached me and was like, oh, like we wanna offer you like member, like to join us, to be a member. And because there's like a list, right? There was on the website there was like a list of what you need to do to be a member. And I mean, I never like expressed interest. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was like, maybe I was gonna do it eventually, but I never said it out loud to anybody. But and you have to like read like certain books. So I felt like maybe at that point I was like, well, I'm not even like there yet. Like I'm not even like. I mean, I was reading the books, but I wasn't like I haven't read all the books yet. So I didn't feel like I was ready to join, right? But I think because I was just consistent, I was always there. I guess he felt like, okay, well, you're dedicated, you're always here, so like, why not, right? Why not join? And so when they first asked me, I kind of said, well, I need to think about it because I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of responsibility, right? It's a lot of like commitment, and um, so no, I don't know. I mean, I was like, well, am I ready? Like, am I ready for this commitment? Like, I think I was in grad school at this point too, so I don't have like the time, or don't have like just able to just to participate as much. So I think I thought for like a week, and then I said, okay, yeah, like sure, like I'll join. And and there's certain things like we have to do, right? Like pay like monthly fees and donations and stuff like that, and participate as much as we can. And so yeah, so I think the good things was obviously it gave me a sense of identity, it gave me a sense of like purpose. I felt like, okay, well now I'm in this organization where we're like fighting for, indigenous rights and helping our community and our people, and and so that's what I was looking for. And yeah, and even like just yeah, just talking about like Latino, Hispanic, like to me, I was never like I never like I never used I never said, oh, I'm Latino, or like I never like really referred to us as that. I just said Mexican. Mexican, and even then people were like, we're not Mexican, we're born here, whatever, right? Just all these things that, but I never really heard Latino until college, right? And I think because that I think I didn't grow up in Spanish media or watching Spanish media, so I didn't really hear the term Latino, Hispanic as much growing up. Um, Even my mom was like, "What is that? Like, what is Latino? Like, we're Mexican, or we're like, my mom was more like, we're Mexican American or whatever." But like, what is Latino? Like, she didn't know what that was. So, um, again, so that was so that was kind of like easy for me to like, okay, we're not Latino, so that's that. Also in high school, I also read that pamphlet. Now it's not Latino, not Hispanic,
Yeah.
and it explained like we're not Latino, like from Latin or whatever. So like I just read it and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And like that was that. Like, I think I was a senior when I read that. Someone had it as a shirt, and so I was like, okay, like that's cool, right? And so it was just easier for me just to grasp all these like concepts, and um, 'cause I know like our people have this hard time like even letting go of that word Latino, and like yeah, just it's like I don't know, it's almost like a they just can't like you just can't get rid of it. I don't know, it's really weird. And most of them are Mexican, so it's kind of like why can't you say Mexican? Why is that why is that like such a bad thing to say, right? But yeah, you have no problem saying Latino, like it's nothing. But yeah, so I think this I think also a good thing was it just helped me be more disciplined to study my history, to like read more, to yeah, just to study. Obviously, we have to know history, right? To we're gonna fight for injustice. We have to like know the history. We have to know how it all connects. Because if we're just kind of I don't know loosely or blindly supporting some things, like well how does history impact like the present, right? And I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think because we grow up here, like we think, oh, the past doesn't matter, like just the past, and like we don't make the connection. Like no, like the past, impacts the future, the present, and so just having me become more studious and more disciplined and like learn my history, right? And what else? What's a good things? What do we learn? What else?
I think writing, you were writing a lot. I think
I started, yeah.
writing a lot.
So I always wanted to be a writer since I was like little, and I remember like I was always like write stories, and so yeah, just reading my history, it just inspired me to like write more, like write poetry, and uh, yeah, so it just gave me like a new purpose. It gave me like it kind of reintroduced like old interests that I had as a child. Um, what else? Yeah, I mean, I think when you have a sense of identity, yeah, it just gives you like more confidence in how you walk in this world, how like I live in Orange County, so sometimes if I go to a white space or a city that's mostly white people, like I don't feel like, oh, I don't belong here because there's too many white people, right? Like I feel like no, I do belong here. Like this, so you walk, higher, like you with your head up, with your head up higher, and it gives you a whole kind of confidence, and I think that's something I lacked for a long time, and um, like it's still like a struggle, but it wasn't as bad as it was like before I knew my identity or who I was, and so yeah, I mean, it just gave me that foundation, right? And it just gave me like the foundation of of decolonizing, and like we see TikToks now or like Instagram, like people talk about like colonization. I was like, wow, like we're seeing that stuff like 10 years ago, but we're looked at like we're crazy or we're racist or
Yep.
we're brainwashed, and so it's really cool to see like people, especially the youth, that are just getting it. Like they're just like,
On
yeah,
fire,
like
lit.
yeah, they're just like they're way beyond advanced than we were at that age. I was like, wow, like it's
Yeah.
what's it honey? Yeah, it's it's just it's very inspiring to see that now, and so yeah, so just having that foundation made it easier for me to like decolonize and to really like open up my eyes and really see the world we live in, and you know, because I mean, I felt like I kind of like, you just feel something, like there's something not right. You just don't know, you don't have the language for it. You don't know like how to explain it. You don't know why things are happening. But like once you like fully understand like our conditions and like how our people are, like our struggles, our issues, you know, it all goes ties to like colonialism, white supremacy, and I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of like depressing, but you know, it just helps to understand like this is why our people are like this, right? And it's not to give them an excuse or not to like, you know, say, well, oh well, we can't change it, but it's just more like, no, like we need to understand it so we could like change it. And you know, when we educate the youth, like, you know, they start to like, you know, they start to, you know, become better, you know, hopefully, right? Like, I mean, I know there's studies that even like just within school, if, you know, if students learn their history in middle school or high school, then they have better outcomes compared to previous, or if they didn't learn their history at that age. And you know, like we all, you know, we all, even the US, right? The US history is very specific. It's very like white history. This is what white people done. So it gives white people confidence, but it doesn't really do anything for us because we're like, well, I remember like to me, I loved history, but I always hated American history. So I was like, where do I tie into American history, right? Like I'm not even like there, right? And like, what does like a Puritan or a Pilgrim have to do with like me, right? And so again, because you know our history is not taught, we had to seek it ourselves, and we had to, um, we had to like teach it to other people. But um, yeah, so I think that's what I guess, you know, those are the good things about the movement.
As far as myself, well, I was in the Mexica movement for 20 years. So there's a lot of things that were positive, but I'll just speak on the highlights. You know, I was 15 years old when I met the Mexica movement, and I wasn't doing too good in high school. I was a ninth grader. You know, I was ditching a lot. Um, I just thought I was like too cool for school. You know, like I was like, oh no, like I'm not gonna learn anything. Anyway, just be dumb, you know. And once I got involved with the Michigan movement, I started reading. Like I've always liked to read, but I became obsessed with reading. Like I was just reading like all the books on the bibliography list. I was going above and beyond, like with homework assignments. And I noticed like my academic performance was like you were talking about, like when you learn who you are, you have a stronger sense of who you are. You're more, you value what you do more. You value your work. You value whatever you write, right? And so definitely one of the positive things was learning my history. In general, learning your history, any ethnic group should empower you, should make you feel connected and valuable. And so I think that's one of the biggest things where I felt like, okay, how can I be over here, you know, vice president of the, you know, CMEX, Chicano, Mexicano, Mexican Empowerment Committee. And then just to let you know too, I was also involved with environmental justice groups. I was involved with Communities for Better Environment. I was involved with Youth Action. So I was vice president of the Mexica Movement High School Club, and I was also president of all these other environmental clubs. I was very active. So one of the positive things about Mexica Movement was giving me that confidence to organize, to go out into the streets, to create other clubs. Like I was just like, no, like this is like, there's so much things to do. I felt very confident. I was doing really well in my school. Teachers were inviting me to speak in their classrooms. Like I'm a student, and yet I have teachers asking me to speak on what I was learning. So that was very beautiful. Other things too, we used to have a booth at Santa Fe Springs Swap Meet. And I remember like, man, it's hard. 15, 16 years old, waking up at 5 in the morning on Sundays. You know, the director would pick me up, and you know, there I was setting up the canopy and like putting out the books out. We used to sell books and t-shirts, and honestly that's where I really learned how to debate, how to express, right, how to articulate like what the message was. That was like my prepping, you know, that was my preparation, because before it wasn't online. Now you got to do it in person. So I remember like really beautiful conversations. I remember really bad arguments. I remember being there. We're there from 6 in the morning to 4 p.m. You know, I'm 15 years old. I'm doing this every Sunday. And it's like, that gave me a lot of, not only do I know how to run a booth at a swap meet now, like I know about canopies, but I learned about that human element, like how to communicate with people. And I'm a 15, 16-year-old little girl, you know, I'm talking to adults, I'm talking to grandparents, I'm talking to elders, I'm talking to youth. So it taught me how to be very open and very, I mean, as it is, I like to talk a lot. But at that time, like learning how to present this information, how to tailor the information to certain people based on their background, their age. And so that was training. That gave me a lot of training with how to interact with people. And also, as far as a poet, I was already a poet in junior high, so when I came across poetry. But through the guidance of the director, he was very supportive of like, yeah, keep writing, keep writing. And I would go with him to KPFK, the radio show. We were invited to do poetry there. We were invited to do different speaking engagements. I spoke, I was like, again, 16, 17, speaking at Northridge about identity, speaking at different high schools about identity. So definitely public speaking, being able to speak and not be embarrassed, because I learned like the message is bigger than me, so I need to like put it out there. So that was real positive. Also working with other communities. We work with the New Panther Vanguard movement in the 90s, like 90s, 98, 99. So that was awesome because we had like the black and brown unity talks, and that was in South LA, and meeting some of the Black Panthers and working on the Black Panther magazine. So my editing skills, like learning how to publish, learning how to do graphic design, that was something very positive. And also we work with the Palestinian movements, Palestinian rights. So learning about cultures in the Middle East, learning about a lot of campaigns, a lot of the history, right, of the different peoples of the Middle East. Like I said, public speaking, organizing. When we work with the Black Panthers, the New Vanguard Black Panther movement, we did campaigning. So learning about how do you canvass cities, how do you knock on people's doors, and how do you talk about policy. So there's all that happening. And I think the most important thing is like being self-taught, right? Being self-taught. I was reading books at 15, 16 that most people weren't reading until they got to college. So I mean, I didn't understand a lot of the words, but I had my little dictionary, and I was just obsessed with understanding this history. Like you're saying, like we have to understand our history. And also I think one of the biggest things for me was challenging like feminism, like in learning my history and through the guidance of the director, was like, where does feminism come from, right? When I met the director, I was a huge Che Guevara fan. Like I used to wear a patch. I was in the ninth grade wearing my Che Guevara patch. I was into Rage Against the Machine. I was like, to me, I was like, I was living it. But actually learning how to be more critical about what we're doing, like what heroes are promoted and why. And I remember meeting Zach de la Rocha from Rage Against the Machine. I met him at the Zapatista March in LA in like early 2000s. And I remember asking him, like, again, I'm a little girl, like I was a little dogmatic, I was a little arrogant, to say. But I remember asking him, like, okay, like if you're about Zapatistas, why don't you promote Zapata in your concerts? Because obviously I was going to all their concerts, and all they would have is Che Guevara, Che Guevara, Che Guevara. So I'm over here like, wait a second, like, okay, we're about our people in Zapatismo, but we're not, like, why not have Zapata up, right? Because to me, it was like, okay, Zapata, Zapatistas, like, why isn't that part of the focus of Rage Against the Machine? So there I was, little girl, thinking I knew everything. And so anyway, so all these things, right, were very positive as far as how I was self-taught. A lot of the education that I've learned was not through academia. It was through the learnings of the Mexica movement, the philosophy, being critical about feminism, being critical about Marxism, being critical about all of these solutions that are presented. And I didn't even know the word decolonize. Decolonize, I think, is a new word. I didn't start using that till like 10 years ago or something. Before it was like learning my history, or like
being conscious.
Being conscious. Like decolonization was not a term I was using. So I would say learning our history, exposing Eurocentricity, even white supremacy I wasn't using until the last 10 years. So anyway, so it gave me that confidence. It gave me the organizing experience, the public speaking, being able to go out there, help organize. I learned how to write press releases. I learned how to deal with the media. I learned how to confront I learned how to deal with haters, how to deal with people that were going to attack us. And also too, as you can see, I'm a light brown, light brown person who's indigenous. So also too, honestly, that didn't really become an issue until I was older. But also understanding, like, to me, I didn't have that complex, because to me, I'm like, no, like, I'm indigenous. Like, yeah, I understand there was sexual terrorism in my ancestry, which is why some of us are lighter, some of us are darker. So to me, it didn't really play too much of a role. If you look at my family, there are those that are green-eyed, there are those that are light-skinned. But if you look at my great grandparents, you're looking at, he looks full blood. He was like,
Cousins, aunts.
yeah, cousins that used met him, and it's like, it just made sense to me. I was like, oh wow, right? And also, I think the most positive thing was saving me from some self-destruction. And I think it's like, I used to like, I was going through a lot of things growing up. Ooh, my goodness. And so, oh my goodness. And so learning your history, like, not, it's not just learning your history. I think it's learning how to be human again, um how to be valuable, how to be a valuable person. And so I think learning who I was, embracing who I was, learning how to love myself, it taught me to be unapologetic, and to, like, if I'm gonna defend a community, if I'm over here fighting for my people, it taught me how to fight for myself. And I think the most positive thing I learned was how to value myself, and how to make sure that I was respected. And that's in everything, in every space. Because in a lot of the things that we grow up, we're taught to be like very quiet, don't speak up, especially women. We're taught to be submissive and calladitas, te ves más bonita. And so it really radicalized me. It radicalized my sense of self. It radicalized my sense of purpose. And to me, I was like, I can't imagine myself not doing this ever. Right. And again, it was 20 years, um, beautiful, positive things. Right. And at the same time, as we're going to get into right now, the next part of this conversation is the bad things, right? The conflicts that we experienced, the issues that we had. Because even though I went through so many beautiful things, as I'm going to share with you in a little bit, it came at a heavy price. Like, people don't know what happened behind closed doors, what those conversations were like. And so part of the reason why we're talking about this is because, I know we've witnessed a lot of people kind of fall to similar patterns and kind of deal with people that have similar toxic behaviors in our collective circles. So that's really, really important, to talk about. We want to be very transparent with everybody. We want to be very honest with everybody, and talk about the negative parts, right? The negative things that we experienced that led ultimately for us to leave, the organization. So, Tiolo, gonna go first.
Yes. um, so when I started to engage with the Mexica movement, I'll be in different spaces or other groups of people, or just some cultural event, whether in Sanana or other places. And I would just kind of like ask like people, oh, so do you know about the Mexica movement? Have you heard about them? And a lot of people have heard about them, but it was always like negative, and they were like, well, yeah, like I met them like years ago or whatever, and they whatever, like they just said, yeah, like it was like either sexism or homophobia or like just different things that they didn't sit right with with those people, so they kind of just didn't join, or they just didn't like associate with them anymore. So this was so again, I was still like new and learning. I was like, well, I've been reading the website and I don't see anything like that. I don't see any like sexism. I don't see any homophobia. I don't see anything in that nature. So, um, so one time, I think it was a lecture, and then I was invited to go eat after, and those like a lot of the members were there, and I was like, so I just said, I've been hearing a lot of things about you guys. This is what I've heard, and I just want to know like, like what's going on, and I think the answer they kind of gave me was like, yes, maybe back then we were sexist, and like now we have to like check ourselves, and like like it's still a struggle, but we still have to like improve and check ourselves, and get better, or like, yeah, maybe we were like homophobic at one point, but now, um, like we are like, that's, like, now we're like working on that, or we're getting better. So it was more like, yes, maybe we're in the past, but now, we're not, or we're trying to improve on that, right? Like that was the impression that I got. So I mean, it kind of, I guess made sense that why other people would say those things, because maybe they had those experience like way before I was even like introduced to the movement. So I didn't really like experience those things. Like, yeah, like I think in the movement, I don't really talk about this, but I identify as like bi, and I did have like a same gender partner at the same time, and I so yeah, I never like we didn't experience like homophobia. We didn't experience anything of that sort. Like most of the members, well, because all the members like really liked him, and they had no issues with him per se. Like they were like, so like us being together wasn't like an issue, right? And I know, again, some people will say, yeah, like, the group's homophobic, and and maybe that's their experience. So I can't say, oh yeah, they're wrong, or I mean whatever. But I guess in my experience, that wasn't like the case. Like I didn't have those experiences, um, in that part. Um, but let me see. So I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of the issue, but yeah, honestly, I feel like some people in the movement, like the director had like some like maybe like mental issues that he's probably dealing with, and just a lot of like paranoia, like you know like people were conspiring, like I'm like, I guess at one point he thought like maybe I was against him and trying to like, I don't know what he thought. Honestly, it was just kind of like, I don't know where this is coming from, but it's not like me per se. I mean, there's always other issues that are happening. I know we had like some members from like London, who resigned, and they told me about it, and they were like, yeah, like we're gonna leave, but we got nothing against you guys. We didn't see eye to eye, and that's it. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I didn't see anything wrong with that, right? I'm like, okay, like you decide to leave, and they were saying, yeah, we're not gonna like bash you guys. We're gonna be cool with you guys, right? And so again, that no one told me, like the doctor didn't tell me like they like left, and but when I found out like we're still like friends, he, I don't know, got like really upset, and I don't like, I guess he thought because I was still friends with them, even though I knew they left, like I was conspiring against him, right? I was like, I don't know how I could do that, but it was just kind of like a weird like accusation, right? Like I was like, this is kind of weird, but I think what really kind of and even like so during I think I remember for like 7 years, and we'll have like talks, me and the director, and like very long lengthy talks, and they're usually, I guess we're talking about earlier how it's like very confessional, or like rebuke, like if you're like a Christian, like there's a term called rebuking, right, where they just kind of like tell you like all things you're doing wrong, whatever. So he'll kind of say like things like, this is what I like about you, this is what I see, this is the improvements, but these are also the things that I don't like. And it's just kind of like, I mean, I guess you could say he was putting me down, but maybe I didn't see it that way. But it was more like this, yeah, like not complaining. Maybe it was like he was like complaining about me, or like, this is what I want to see you growing, or I don't like how you talk to this person, and just like all these like little like weird things, and and yeah, so it wasn't as bad as some people got it, but it was more like, this is what you're doing wrong, this is what it is. But yeah, so they're very just weird. But so towards the end, I think he wanted to talk to me about the two people that left in London, and and maybe he took it like I was avoiding him, but it was like, okay, I'm like, at that point I was really busy, and I was like, I can't like spare like 3 hours right, on the phone. So I was like, I need to like, I'll call him when I have that time to like spare, right? But I think that kind of like made him like maybe even more like paranoid, or more like, I don't know, just he just thought like maybe he's like up to something. I think maybe he thought I was up to something, but I guess what really was like the like catalyst for like me leaving was so it was like during Standing Rock time, and they the movement proposed that, um, so it was their second time going there, and they were saying we're gonna, we want to invite people to join us, and um, so let me know, right? So I took a while to decide, and I was like, okay, I was decided I wanted to go, and I approached them, like, hey, like, I want to join you guys, and they were like, well, we already have our people, like, we don't really need you, we don't need you, and but you can like donate if you want or whatever, you could donate. So okay, I was like, okay, and then also thinking about it, and I was like, what, I'm gonna go, like, I'm just gonna go, and so I donated. I said, okay, like, so I messaged people, director, hey, I'm going to the to Standing Rock, and like the first thing he said was like, well, we can't accommodate you. You can't come with us. We don't have room for you. And I was like, well, I'm not like asking for anything. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. And I think so I think that like really got him like mad. So he like ignored me. I don't think I don't think he responded anymore. And but I think what made me decide to go. So I so before that, actually, let me go back. So before that, um, I got together with some like people, like some supporters and members, and then so one of the persons, someone approached me, was like, hey, the director wants you to be a supporter now, not a member. And I was like, well, like why? What's going on? He's like, well, I don't really know. He says you don't talk to him anymore. And I was like, well, I have like messages, like current ones. You want to see them? He's like, well, I don't know. That's between you two. Like, you need to work it out. But he wants you to like, basically, I was like demoted, right? Like demoted to a supporter without like a reason. Like I wasn't given an explanation. So I messaged like a few people, director, co-director, and say, hey, this is what's happened. This is what I've been told. Like, can you tell what's going on? And then I was ignored, like no response, right? So then I was like, okay. So that maybe I wasn't being petty, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to Sunny Rock. Like I'm not gonna like tell me not to go when he's not even like giving an explanation like why I'm being a supporter now instead of a member. And then so that's what I told him. And then mind you, I sent him a message that he ignored, but as soon as I said when it's Sunny Rock, he like replied right away. Like so again, so I told you that's already, but so that's what happened. So then Sunny Rock happens. We I get there, we both get there around the same time. And so I see them, I see the movement there, and I go up to them, like, you could tell when um, someone doesn't want you around, right? And it was kind of like a blow because like I was talking to the director, and he was just like, it was like a weird vibe. It was just like he didn't want me near him. He was being like very like short, very distant with me, even in our conversation. Um, yeah, like he just didn't want me around. That's the impression that I got. And then I was like, okay, so I'm not gonna be where I'm not wanted. But it was more like, after like 7 years, like how can you like just treat me like that? Like you just treated me like I was nothing, like I was just like a stranger. Um, it was really weird. Like it was very petty, very weird. Um, and then I think the second day I went, they were like outreaching, so I went again. Like, hey, like I approached another person, like, hey, like, do you guys need help? And then he was like, well, so I think you better go. And then he kind of just looked at, like, he kind of like gestured to like the director, like maybe kind of saying, like, oh, like he doesn't want you here, kind of thing. So I was like, okay, I see how it is. So the whole time I just avoided, like I didn't see them anymore. But I think they're somewhere. I think they're also at the hotel most of the time too. But I didn't see them in any like actions that we had that the camp had. I didn't see any of them at protests. There's a couple protests even in a day. So I never saw them anywhere. So it was like, yeah. So it was like a weird thing. And so we come back, and they're just like they're just like bashing me pretty much. They're just like talking shit about me, behind my back, and just saying things like, oh, like he can't prepare, like he didn't have enough clothes, and, and I was like how do they know this, right? Or like, oh, he's still eating people's food, and I'm just like, I only saw you like one time, like, and it's funny because even the whole like food thing, when I saw them, there was like this like Christian like van, like this big old van. I don't know, and they were like selling, they were like giving people food, and so I didn't even eat their food, but everyone else like from the movement ate their food, right? And I'm just like, I can sit there and say like, oh, I was eating people everyone's food, whatever that means, but yeah, you're over here eating like some organization's food. Which is weird. And then even the way I was like, I guess the way I was dressed, like I guess I mean, my body is really good for like cold weather. Like I'm always like hot anyway. So I mean, I guess the way I looked, I mean, I had like I had sweaters, jackets, sweats underneath my pants. So I was wearing boots, I had gloves. So I don't know. Maybe I looked like maybe I was cold or I didn't have enough clothing to keep me warm. I don't know. Because even another person who I didn't even know looked at me was like, "Oh, are you cold?" And I was like, "No." And she like basically like dragged me to give me a jacket. I was like, "I don't need a jacket or I don't need anything, but thank you if you want to, if you're so insistent." But so I don't know, maybe that's what it was. But it's kind of like okay, like I didn't, but it's just weird. Just even like instead of as I mean, they were so concerned about like, well, maybe they weren't concerned, but if they felt like, oh, maybe he's not dressed properly for the weather, like they didn't even like offer like, hey, like do you need like some clothes? Like you want me to take you somewhere? Like it was like there was no like care. Like even if they felt really felt like I was underdressed, instead of like offering me help, they're like just talking shit behind my back, right? So it was like all these weird things that were happening like when I got back, and so that's when I kind of just distanced myself. I didn't go to any more like protests. I didn't go to any more, and that's when a big thing was happening, right, with like white supremacists in South Central or Clanton Park.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So big things were happening, but I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm not gonna like,
Yeah.
if they don't want me, like I'm not, and it wasn't like, oh, like we don't. I mean, no one ever said anything to me after that, but I was like I wasn't like blocked, I wasn't like banned, I wasn't like expelled, I wasn't like given some kind of like I don't know written thing like hey like we don't want you here anymore. So but I chose to like kind of like fall back and not participate, and so like about a year, and then and and then there was also like a white ally, quote unquote ally, that was also there that I was kind of iffy about as well. And but so she was really cool, but then things were kind of happening. And I was like, there's something off about her. So again, I just kind of like took, and because she was friends with everybody and everyone like loved her, I was like, well, I'm not gonna whatever. I'm not gonna say anything, but I'll just step back. So a year later, um, that's when like Citlalli comes out and like other women come out and talk about this like white woman who was like basically sexually harassing like the men, who's doing all these like weird inappropriate things, and I was like, okay, and it made sense because like when I was talking to her, like she liked um like one of my friends, so it was just like and so then but now I'm hearing that's like three other people, and then other people that are saying like yeah, she was like weird or she was like harassing me too. And these are people that some of them even they didn't even live local, some of them live in different states. So also was things were coming out about her. And then so that's when I was like, so yeah, I mean obviously I had like I had Citlalli's back and other women that were like talking about her. And I'm like, yeah, like I've also seen that. Or like, I saw like I didn't think it was like harassment. It was more like, oh, I have crushes on people or I have a crush on someone, whatever. But then it was like, okay, now it's like consistently, now it's like other people are saying, oh no, like it was weird. No, she was like talking about she was hitting on me or harassing me. So it was getting like weirder and weirder and weirder. I'm like, okay, okay, well maybe there's like a pattern happening here. And so so big old thing happened. Like, I just saw like how the women were being treated, how they're being disregarded, they're being treated like trash basically. I was like, well, same for me. I was like, I was being discarded as well, and being treated like trash. So it just when she started coming out about it, it was easy for me like, yeah, like I agree because that's what I've seen. It's what happens. That's what's happening to me. And so we just decided, I don't know, I guess officially leave. I don't know. I mean, um I guess she asked me, oh, you want to write a statement? I was like, because me, honestly, I was gonna be like, okay, I was gonna like wash my hands and like just like, okay, like whatever, I'm done, and I wasn't gonna like really address it anymore. But yeah, the guy was like, yeah, you should write a statement. And you're talking about your experience, so I just wrote a statement as well. And so yeah, so that's like why. Like,
And for those of you watching, the statements that we wrote, which we'll get into, I'm gonna leave the link on this video description. A lot of people, they're long, you know, it's long statements. The two other sisters, myself, Huitzilyolotl, and then another person that was, I think, in Washington, wrote a statement. So as far as myself, you know, it's 20 years. So I'm gonna try to do a chronology. I'm not gonna give you all the details. Again, the highlights of what happened. So I'm 15 when I joined the organization. At that time, I had a girlfriend, and someone told only, I mean, yeah, the director that had a girlfriend, and he was like, "You shouldn't be doing that. Don't be out. Our people are not ready to see you, or our people with same gender relationships." And I was like, "Okay." So I was like, you know, I was like, "Okay, this is about." So anyway, so I 15 years old, right? You don't know any better. You're just like, okay, then, you know, I was back to the closet, identify as bi, I guess, as well. And so I was like, okay, so that happened. And then there's one time, or probably twice, I didn't wake up to go to the swap meet at 5 in the morning. And so I got suspended for that. Again, I'm 15 years old. I didn't wake up, so I get suspended for not waking up on time. And so the years go on, you know, I'm at this point, I'm practically the only woman member in all these years. And so obviously other, you know, young men are there and they're making like sexist jokes and like very uncomfortable, right? Talking about women's bodies and stuff. And I remember just looking at the director, like, are you gonna like say something here? Like, this is uncomfortable. And then I remember talking to him about it, and he was like, "Oh, you know, that's your role as a woman member. That's your role. Like, you know, you got to confront these people. You got to confront the members." And I'm like, "Fuck! Like, I'm fucking 15, 16 years old. Like, okay." And again, I'm young. I'm trying to, you know, live up to his standards. And so I remember, like, you know, calling them out, like on the sexism, on what they were talking about. And so as time goes on, you know, there's a lot of stuff happening in my life, and I had to, you know, I think I relied a lot on the emotional support from the organization. But it was weird because it was like, don't talk about your problems, like, but be ready for this event or something like that. Like, it was just weird, like the messages I got about like how to take care of myself, but that wasn't really present. But it was like, just be ready for events. And so, you know, that happened. And when I was when I got suspended that one time, I was 17. I think I got suspended again. I was 17 years old. And at this point, like, I was like, when you're suspended in the Mexica movement, you're excommunicated. Like, no one can call you, talk to you. You're basically like banned, like you never existed. And so I was excommunicated. I'm 17 years old. And then at this time, I didn't think about it, like what was happening, but I had a member who was like 28, 27. He was like, "Oh, you know, come with me. Like, I'm going to try to convince the director for you to come back and come to my house. And, you know, you might have to spend the night because we have an event the next day." And so again, me trying to like go back to the Mexican movement, me trying to like, you know, regain my member status, I go to the member's house. And I was sexually harassed. You know, I defended myself, I protected myself, you know, I got out of that situation. And so again, I'm suspended, I'm trying to go back, but it's like, um, you know, it was a really messed up situation. And then I didn't want to tell my mom because, as it is, I'm the only woman member. She already didn't like me being part of it because she was like, it's a bunch of guys and you're the only girl. And I was really wanting to be part of it. So then I remember something happened where I came back to the organization. Another woman member that was joining the organization at that time, she was also like in her late 20s. And then she was also like sexually harassing me. And so I was like, what the fuck? Like, what do I have to go through to be part of this organization? And so I remember telling the director about how I was sexually harassed by the male member. And he was like, well, you must have done something. like, you know, you're like kind of saying like I did it to myself, right? And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, like why were you there? Like kind of gaslighting me, like discarding my experience. And I was like, fuck yeah, why was I there? So it made me like start blaming myself, right? Didn't care that I was 17, didn't mind that the member was like almost 30 years old. And so I was like, okay, again, I'm not telling my mom because she's not gonna let me be part of this anymore. So anyway, I'm part of the organization. Time goes on, and like, you know, I'm not sure about college. Like I was like, oh, I'm not sure if this is a place for me. Like it's all whitewashed. And so anyways, I go to college. We create a club called Anahuac Studies Club at East LA College. We do all these events, and you know, I'm passionate about this, so I'm organizing. I'm the person that's organizing. I'm the person that's running for the treasurer. I'm doing all these things, and that continues happening. I'm in charge of all these things, and at that time I didn't see how I as a woman was expected to do all these secretarial things. It wasn't until later, right? So again, I go through high school, um, I go on to college, and then in college, uh, I was in a relationship with another member of the organization, and we were suspended for being basically together, being in love and having a relationship. And so we were suspended. We were told you're not supposed to, you can't date each other. That's against the Mexica Movement policy, which there was none on that point. So I was like, okay, that happened. And so I started noticing too, like there's other couples happening in the organization. There's other people that are getting together, getting married, but yet that was okay for them, right? Nothing was ever done to them. But to us, to me in particular, I was always like, he always disciplined me. He always punished me the worst. And other examples too were, for example, when like he was always asking me about my romantic life, like, you know, who I was dating and why, and that I shouldn't be dating, like I should be more focused on the movement. And I'm like, well, the co-director is married, has kids. All these members are married, have kids, and I'm supposed to like never be married. And so that really stood out to me because, you know, there was the couple from the UK. They were a couple, right? They met. It was a beautiful couple, and he was like praising them and like, oh yes, how beautiful a couple coming together. So anyway, I was like, wait a second, like the way he punish other people, the way he viewed other people, and the way he punished me was completely different. And so then I focused on school. Mind you, I've been on my own since I was 18 years old. I've lived on my own. I had to work like 3 jobs. Like I lived in my car for a little bit. Like I was going through a lot of things. And so I'm over here trying to like live up to his expectations of being a Mexica warrior. And I'm over here trying to survive and, you know, stay alive and be fed. And this one time I remember I bought a car because my car was dead and they had left me. So I needed a car. And I remember him calling me and like shaming me for buying a car. And I'm like, but I need a car. Like I have 3 jobs. Like how am I gonna get by? Like he's like, oh, you're materialistic. You're you know, that's money that you could be using for the organization. I was like, again, at that time, like I need you to understand, like my life was the organization. This is my life. I must do this. I'm gonna do what I have to deal with in order for me to be part of this organization. This organization means my world. This organization means my life. And so I was like, wow, I even tried to return the car the next day. Like, and my friends were like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to return your car? Like, how are you going to get by? And I was like, no, like, I'm materialistic. Like, I would believe his criticisms of me. And I was like, so anyway, so luckily they didn't let me return the car. And I had to keep the car. And so I go on to college, and again, this is 20 years I'm telling you here. So now this is like in the 2000s, like middle 2000s. So in the 2000s, one of the things was everything I would write before it was on the website, he had to approve everything. Like no matter anything I wrote, any post I did, he wanted to approve it. Like he didn't want me to just post it on my own. So then when he suspended me um, for being in a relationship with another member, I was like, okay, well, I'm excommunicated. He would write emails to me, and he's like, good, being excommunicated, you should learn more. This should teach you a lesson. But then I found it interesting that I wasn't allowed to participate in the events, but the male member who I was in a relationship with, that we're not together or whatever at that point, he was allowed to fully participate. So I was like, okay, so I'm not allowed to participate, even though we're both suspended, but the male member is allowed to participate. And so I was like, what the fuck? Like, things started like popping up in my head, like, okay, like, what's going on with this? And so I started noticing that discrimination, and that sexism. And then as we get more into the organization, right, I remember I sent him, I created a YouTube video for the first time ever. I was suspended. I was like, fuck it, suspended or not, like, I need to get this message out. There's YouTube. I'm going to try to make a video. Like, this information needs to get out there. So I did a video and I put it out there. I didn't tell him about it. Again, I'm excommunicated. So I just uploaded my video on YouTube and whatever, let it be. And then I get an email months later, and he sends me that YouTube video that I made. And he was like, this is an example of what I wish you would do. Like, I was like, that's my fucking video. And I was like, at that point, I didn't think like that. I was like, wow, like, he likes my video. Again, I was all like trying to please, this director, like I would validate my contributions based on his approval or not. So the fact that he liked the video, I was like, oh, well, that was me actually. I've learned a lot from that. So anyway, so then he's like, oh, really? That was you? Okay, yeah, you should do videos like that. So anyway, so I'm working, I'm back in the Mexica Movement, I'm doing videos, I'm donating, I'm doing all these things. And so what else do I have on my list on here? And so, yeah, so then I started focusing on college, right? I started focusing in school. And so things start happening, right? I'll get on Facebook, I start doing more videos, and I'm working, I'm going to school. And then he's like, why are you going to school? Like, you should focus on the Mexica Movement. Like, that's a lot of time that you're spending on school. You should focus on this right now. And then I'm like, wait a second. He's telling me this at the same time that other members are going to school. Other members are going to college, getting their degrees, but somehow he didn't want me to go to college. He wanted me to focus on the Mexica Movement. So I was like, okay, well, okay, I'll take off this semester then, right? He's like, yes, focus on this. The momentum is now. You need to like put it on hold. And so I'm doing all these things, thinking, okay, right, like this is for the better good of the organization. And so I start noticing these things. And so, I'm organizing the events. I'm doing the fundraising. I'm doing videos where my face is the face of the Mexica Movement, because obviously I'm doing these videos where my face is there. And so I'm doing all these things. And then it comes a point where I'm noticing, like, when the phone calls that we would have, just to let you know, we used to have meetings before, like in the early 90s, the late 90s and 2000s, Mexica Movement, we used to have meetings once a month. We would like talk. It was very democratic at that time. People would talk, and we would have consensus. But towards the late 2000s, like, that was out the window. Like, he would call members personally, tell us all different things, and hope that we never talk to each other about it. And this really came to light when I started talking to the members, because the thing is, I'm going through all this bullshit, and I didn't want to tell the new members, because I felt that if I shared that with them, they wouldn't want to get involved. So I told myself, okay, I'm going to deal with his bullshit, because at the end of the day, me being in this organization, I'm going to help somebody else not have to go through it. Like, I want to be the person that makes things different in the organization. Like, I felt like I had to sacrifice my well-being in order to help others, like, gain the benefits of the organization. And so, I'm noticing all these things, and I would want to say, just to start wrapping it up as far as where we left, towards the end, like, once the Minutemen came out, we went to Arizona all these times, all these things are happening around 2017, the same year that we left. The white supremacists, all these racist, people were going to the city hall meetings of Huntington Park, of Cudahy, of Maywood, and they were trying to push the cities to call themselves sanctuary cities. If a city self-identifies as a sanctuary city, they lose certain amount of federal funding. And so what these white supremacists were doing were going to these meetings, terrorizing them, antagonizing them, trying to get them to claim sanctuary cities. And obviously we heard about it, right? And we started going to these meetings. We started defending the cities. And my husband, he's always been very protective of me. And he, at this point, the director has moved to Mexico. He no longer lives in the US. He moved to Mexico, and all this is happening. The most ugly, most violent protests I've ever been to are happening now, 2017. And so a particular protest that we went to in Cudahy, I remember going, we're working with the community or the organizations, and I'm never gonna forget this. We're protesting white supremacists who are carrying knives, who are carrying pepper spray, who are like pepper spraying little kids. All this was on the news. I'm the spokesperson. I'm dealing with the media. We have a consensus in the group that no one's gonna confront, that we all have to stick together. We all gotta protect each other. Supposedly I had security, right? Supposedly I had a security person to take care of me. Because as you can imagine, being the face of the Mexica movement, I got a lot of crap for it, a lot of hate mail, death threats. It was ugly, right? Being a face of the Mexica movement was not a good thing. And so the protest happens, the white supremacists, show up. Things are pretty peaceful at the beginning, but next thing you know, like they crossed the line. The police were not there to defend any side. There was no line of division. People are like pushing each other, shoving. And I'm like, what the heck? Like everything that we had said we were going to do didn't happen. We were supposed to not engage those white supremacists. We're supposed to be there for the community, defend the community. And it felt horrible to see that our own members can't even hold it together. Like I'm over here like with the bullhorn, and I have all these youth with me. These are teenage kids, these are little kids, right? And their moms and their grandparents. And there was just chaos. And I remember coming home and just I had like bruises and stuff. And my husband was like, okay, how are you doing? Like, don't you have security? Like, why weren't you protected, or why weren't you defended? And I'm like, well, it's okay. Like, it just happened so fast. Like, it's nobody's fault. And so I call the director and I tell him what happens, right? I'm like, man, like it was horrible. Like, it's been crazy. Like, no one stood in their position. Like, everything just went crazy. Like, we had a lot of members who were hotheads. Like, they just wanted to go out and confront and talk shit. And I'm like, anyway, that was another issue. And so what happened, the director was like, oh, well, next time you should take your own self-defense too. You should take pepper spray. Maybe you should take this. Maybe you should take defense stuff. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, wait, like you're in Mexico chilling somewhere on a hammock, and I'm over here putting my life on the line, right? Like, and then you're telling me that wasn't enough. Like, I had to go get, like, you want me to be more confrontational? And so to me, I had a conversation with my husband, and he's all like, no one's protecting you. You're not, like, you're over here putting your life over here, but the person that's telling you what to do is over there in Mexico and is not facing the same dangers that you are. And it really hurt. Like when my husband told me that, it was like, fuck, like it was a hard pill to swallow, because I'm so like, passionate and dedicated and committed to this organization, that I wasn't seeing how my own life was obviously in danger, and it was being even more sabotaged, right? So that was a red flag for me. And not only that is happening, right? He's like, we would have meetings with community organizers, and he would tell me, this is what you have to say. Don't let this person say this. You have to say this. You have to say that. So I was like, okay, like, I just felt like I wasn't, like I was there, but he wanted to puppeteer me to say what he wanted to say. And it was horrible. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I've been doing this for 20 years. Like, what's going on? And at the same time, what's happening, and just to add to what you were saying, is I'm having like a lot of arguments with him, because I'm like, I don't think we should be endangering our lives here. The protests were never as violent as they were that year. Like all the years that he was here in the organization and the protest, it never got as bad as it was. So now that he left to Mexico, shit was hitting the fan, and us, the members, were doing the best that we could. And at the same time, I remember that same year, I started thinking, I was like, wait a second, like I'm the person that's doing the press releases. I'm the person that's doing the organizing, getting the events together. And I remember the press release, the last press release I did, I wrote it and I sent it to him. And I go, you know, here's my press release. I wrote it out. And he sent it back to me, whatever. And he published it and he put his name as the author. And I was like, what the fuck? That was another red flag. And then I noticed, because in the events that we would have, we would film our presentations and then we upload them on YouTube to share with people that weren't there. So I noticed that the last few years, you know, miraculously, my lectures were lost. I would ask him, oh, you know, are you going to work on my lecture, the one I gave at the Centro Cultural de Mexico, the one I did at East College? He's like, oh, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know what happened. I can't find your presentation. So I believed it the first few times. After the third or fourth time, I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I'm being purposely erased from this organization. My work, my contributions are purposely being sabotaged. And so I was like, wow, like I'm organizing, I'm putting the events together, I'm doing the fundraising, I'm being the spokesperson, but yet my presentations, my contributions are being completely erased. So then I started recording my own lectures, started doing my own stuff. And I remember asking him one day, I was like, you know, I've been here for 20 years. Like, you know, is there like, how are we going to become a director? Like, will I ever be a co-director, or like, what does that look like? And he's like, oh, no, no, no. There could only be, according to our bylaws, it could only be, you know, a director and a co-director. And, you know, I'm preparing you for when I'm gone, you're going to be in charge. But, you know, like, we can't say that. So I was like, okay. So over the phone, you're telling me that you want to prepare me for when you're gone, that I'm going to be the person in charge. But when I'm asking you about a position, like any position, it was like, no, there's bylaws. And for those of you who don't know, like, Mexica Movement stopped being a nonprofit 501c decades ago. So there was no bylaws, there was no official determination of what a co-director and director was. So anyway, there's all these red flags that are gathering, right, throughout all these years. And again, I'm there because I'm like, no, like, I'm gonna change things. I want to be more approachable. Well, another big thing that happened, this two last things, and then we'll wrap up. But I remember, you know, I'm going to school. I got my bachelor's. I moved on, and I'm studying a lot of new material. I'm coming across articles. I'm coming across new research. I'm telling him about it, and I'm trying to post it on my Facebook. I'm trying to do this, and he was like, "No, no, no, don't share that. People are not ready for that. People are gonna get confused. Don't share with them that article. I haven't heard of that author. I don't know if I'm not familiar with that historian." And I'm like, okay, but it's good information. Like, we should all know this. Like, and he's like, no, 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 people are not ready. So the research I was making, he was policing. He was like, no, people are not ready. And then I was like, wait a second. Like, it's not about people are not ready. It's the fact that he didn't want me knowing more. He didn't want me presenting new information because he felt threatened that somehow his position or his authority would be undermined because I'm now learning new information that he didn't know. And so all this is happening at the same time that this white ally comes around, and this white ally is posting stuff on Facebook like, I don't get it. Like, why don't Mexicans understand? Like, they're not Hispanic or Latino. Like, I get tired of explaining it to them. And I'm like, she's a white
After
ally.
like 2 months.
Yes. I was like, you're white, lady. And so not only that, you know, I start hearing members complaining about her. You know, members were complaining about her, saying that she would get drunk and call members, you know, drunk and invite them over, right? And I was like, what the fuck? Like, and then Olin would pray. I mean, the director, we all know this. He would praise her, like, oh, she's great. She's all these beautiful things. And I'm like, wait a second, like, she's sexually harassing the members, you know, and she's speaking about our community with such like liberty and authority. Like, she's not respecting our spaces. And another thing that started happening, she started being invited to our member meetings. And I was like, wait a second, like this is happening, this is known to be happening, but yet she's still given this green light. And then I remember, and this is something that I will forever regret, but he was like, okay, you know what? Like, she has mental health problems. We can't be so direct with her. You know, interview her. Go and interview her. And then the interviewer ask her questions like, you know, why do you fetishize brown men? Like, that's not good. Like, that's part of white supremacy. He's like, try to confront her in a way that's gentle, that doesn't hurt her feelings. So I will de pendeja, you know, I'm over there with the fucking camera and shit, and we met at a Starbucks, and I had the questions, and I was like talking to her about it. Like, I was like, you know, like kind of speaking about her contribution as an ally. And she was like, well, you know, I don't want to procreate with them. I just, you know, I'm just so attractive to like brown men. And I'm like, yes, but do you understand that that plays into the whole white supremacy about the fetishizing of Mexican men, indigenous men? And she's like, yeah, I understand, but it's just, I'm not trying to procreate. I'm just like, basically, like she just wanted to sexually use the members. And that was okay. Like she was saying that that should be fine. So anyway, so that interview, I don't know what happened there. I talked to Olin about it, to the director, and he was like, oh, we got to be careful with her. She has mental health problems. She's depressed, like painting her out as a victim. So at the same time that this is happening, there's a lot more things happening in the background, as you can imagine. But the last straw was, you know, a lot of, like I said, a lot of members were like, what's going on? Why is the director like so like obsessed with this person? Like, what's going on? And so I was like, I don't know, right? Like a lot of us were in agreement, like, we don't know what's going on. So I unfriend her, right? I unfriend her on Facebook. I send a message to the members and I say, I'm sorry, you guys could talk to her all you want, but I'm not gonna be her friend on Facebook. Like, this is disrespectful to us. I screenshotted what she wrote about how she was so disappointed in our people because they weren't getting the message. And I left it at that. I was like, okay, y'all can be friends with her. I'm not gonna be friends with her. Like it's really upsetting to me the way she's talking about our community. And so anyway, that happens. And then about 2 weeks later, I get a call from the director, and he was like upset. He was enraged that I unfriended her, that she called him crying, that she was a mess, and he was mad at me. He was like, you shouldn't have done that, her mental health, her this and that. And I was like, only like, what about the mental health of the members? What about the fact that she's sexually harassing the members? Like, does that not bother you? Like, you know, he was like, no, you know, it's not that, it's that we have to be careful. And I couldn't believe it. Like, we got into a heated argument. And he was like, no, you don't understand. You just want to do things your way. You want to take over the organization. That's all you want. It's control. And I was like, wait a second. I just unfriended her. That's all I did was unfriend her and tell the members why I unfriended her. And he was like, no. And I was like, only what if this, whatever, what if this was a white male ally that was coming to the organization, sexually harassing us, the women in the organization, calling us drunk. And he's like, oh, that's very different. He's like, it would be very different. And I was like, what the fuck do you mean, right? And for the first time in the 20 years that I was a member, I raised my voice. And I said, and he was screaming at me. He was like, you don't get it. It's because she contributes and she, I was like, and he was screaming at me. He's like, you're being so disrespectful, you know. And for the first time in my life, I said the name, right? I said, director, I said, stop talking to me like that. You do not have to talk to me like that. And I'm never gonna forget. Like, I can hear him breathing like he could not believe that I was actually demanding respect. I'm never gonna forget that. And he was like, no, you don't understand. You're being disrespectful. You want everything your way. You want to take over the organization. So anyway, long story short, you know, I sent an email and I said, well, he actually emailed me suspending me for doing what I did, right? It was unfriending this white ally and all these other things. And so what happens is he sends me an email saying, you are going to be suspended for 6 months. Don't talk to nobody. Don't talk to the other two women that also put in their statements. You know, you're all dangers. You're all trying to conspire against the Mexica movement. And so I was like, wow, you know, like obviously this has been a big fear and paranoia of the director. He had this fantasy that someone's going to come take over and he was going to lose all authority, all control, like he was just going to be ignored. Anyway, and so it took me a long time to respond to that email. And I had to think about it. I reflected and I responded that email, which you can read under the video description. And I basically said, you know what? Like, I'm not going to respond to you. I'm not going to accept this suspension. And then I told him, I explained everything that happened. And I said, he was telling me, oh, don't use the Mexica Movement material. Don't do this. And so my response was like, no, like, I've been here for 20 years. If anything, you need to credit me for the stuff that I have done, right? And I said, there's a lot of work to be done. We need to be more democratic. And you can read all of that on your own. It's on the video description. But I was basically defending myself. And I was saying, no, I'm not going to allow myself to be exploited. I'm not going to allow myself to be, thrown around like if anything, I'm not going to be disregarded like that. And so I called out his misogyny. I called out his verbal abuse. I called out the emotional abuse. And I said, if you don't respond to me, if you don't apologize for your behavior, I'm going to make this public. And so he didn't apologize for his behavior. He sent me another hate mail. And so I published that interaction and I published my response to it. And since then, that's when I left the organization with two other women, Huitzilyolotl and other people too that were other supporters left. So what happened in between this time, we're gone and I'm getting emails from other people, right? Other people that had encountered sexual harassment from members, other people that had encountered sexual harassment and belittling from this fake white ally. And so everything just starts coming out and I'm just like, fuck, like I felt horrible. And the people were like, yeah, we couldn't tell you this before because, we didn't know like if you were going to excommunicate us because that's a Mexica Movement style. And it just felt horrible because I was like, no, like that's not what this is about. And so that's how I ended up leaving the organization. Again, this is 20 years of, like I said, there was good things to it, but at the end, the red flags were horrible. It was toxic. It was machismo. It was, a lot of abuse. And I'm sharing this because I've seen a lot of young, especially young women out there who are falling to these patterns, right? To this, I would call it the decolonized machista, right? And one of the biggest fears of mine is, besides the sexual harassment, is how, in the organization, there was a time where male members were chatting with little girls online. And me being the person that I am, I would call it out. I was like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, this is wrong. And then obviously that was confronted. But the reason why I'm sharing this is because, again, so many things have happened. I see so many, patterns around other circles, and I don't want people to fall victim to this. And like I said, as there were beautiful moments, this is what was going on in the background. And with Huitzilyolotl, he's been an amazing friend of mine. And he's actually one of the few people that I actually started talking more about what was happening, because I felt like, fuck, like, I don't want nobody else going through this. Like, how can we end this? And in the organization, we lost so many great members. We lost people that intelligent, creative, that have beautiful ideas, but because they weren't approved by the director, they were basically, shamed, they were gaslighted, and they were gone. And so I myself stood so long because like I said, I thought I was going to be the person to change things. I thought I was going to be the person that confronted and like helped things make things better. And people would tell me like, yeah, like, and not to brag, but I feel good when people tell me that they felt comfortable with me, that they felt like happy, like that I was very open and welcoming to them. And I was proud of that, because I was like, yeah, I felt like that was my contribution to the organization, was that I was going to be that person that was friendly, welcoming, not trying to be elitist. But now that I'm older, thanks to great friends, thanks to my husband, like I was able to walk away from this toxic organization that really, really messed up with my emotions, messed up with what I am as a person, right? And it's going on 4 years now, and I've healed. And we'll get into what's happened after, right after we left. But that's why I'm sharing this, that hopefully if you see yourself in this type of organization, if you see yourself having these type of interactions, like you're able to spot them out and confront them, because we're talking about liberating our people, we're talking about decolonization, but how can we do that when we're oppressing each other and we're gaslighting and we're practicing machismo, we're practicing colorism, we're practicing shaming of each other? So with that, let's end it with what has our life been up to after we left the organization? So we left in 2017. It's now 2021. You know, what's happened since?
I don't know. Well,
He's had a lot of things happen since. A lot of beautiful things have happened since.
it's funny because when I started grad school and how long I was a member, so grad school was a horrible experience. It was it was beautiful, but also also bad. But it took me basically like 7 years to finish a 2-year degree, right? And a lot of it was just, whatever, not being supported by my professors, and other things were happening. But weirdly enough, like when I left, like I finished grad school. I'm not saying that was like correlated, but it just, that's what happened. Like literally what happened like next. And then and yeah, so that happened. And then I was like, okay, my goal was to be a professor. And I was like, well, I don't do that anymore. I don't want to be around these sellouts. Like grad school was traumatizing. So I went to massage school, which was like part of my family. Like it's been like as far as I know, my dad and my grandma used to do. They're like sobadores, and so that's always something that I've always done. Even as like young as 4, I was always like massage people, or like it was just people would just ask me, and I just do it. Even as I got older, like when I was in high school, like friends would tell me, "Oh, you can't like massage me," like guys and girls, and like it was never like a weird thing. It was not like, I was never like, "Oh, that's weird. I don't want to touch you." Like, "Oh, okay, sure, whatever." Like it was just something natural. Um, so yeah, I haven't talked about it in my thesis. I think that was like the next step. And so I went to massage school, got that, and then it's like also again, and something I can contribute to like my community. I work on my own. I work, somewhere else, but I feel like that's also like part of that healing that we have. We have a lot of like trauma, like historical trauma, and even in massage school, like we learn like our body holds trauma, right? Like our body holds pain, our body holds emotions, and so yeah. So it's really interesting when I work with someone and they're just like, I was having flashbacks from like childhood, or like I was crying for like a week after your massage, and I was like, wow, that's like intense, right? So that happened, and then so again, I feel like I'm always in school, but so after massage therapy, I was like, okay, what's next? Like, I don't see myself doing a massage therapy full time. It's a lot on your body, but yeah, and then so I worked in education for a long time, since I was like 18. It's like my first business. That was my first job, and I felt like being a teacher was always there, but I think I had avoided it for so long. And um, I don't know, maybe I just didn't feel ready, or I didn't feel like, I don't know what, but around 2018, 19, probably 19, I read this book. It was called Boys Adrift, and it talks about, things that I already knew, but basically it was like, boys in this country are having this crisis, and we don't have mentors, we don't have guidance, and I was like, yeah, like, I always like felt like, yeah, but then we don't, like, as boys, we don't, you know, like as men, we don't have like these like ceremonies that tell us, okay, now you're a man, right? Like, back in the day, we had to either hunt or go to war, or like, to create some kind of crazy, amazing feat that was like, okay, like you're a man now, like you achieve something, right? And you know, it just, again, I feel like there's a lot of issues that men face now because of that, right? At least with women, they have, especially in our culture, we have at least a quinceañera, right? And I know some people were trying to like change it, like, oh no, we need boys need something too, right? And so yeah, so I read this book, and it just blew my mind in a sense of like, I felt like it was like this push, like I needed, like, okay, it's time to be a teacher. It's time to be a teacher now. And like we like boys need guidance and need like role models, and I mean that's part of why I was in education too. Because like boys need to see like us like in these spaces, and also like I've been doing behavior intervention for like 7 years with emotional students with emotional disturbance, and these students are very difficult to work with, and but I like, and they're very hard to like love, right? Like, but I like what are like the complaints that people have about them. That's why I love working with them, because they're just they just break like whatever you think it is to be a teacher, they just like break everything. Like they just kind of um any kind of notion you have to be a teacher, they're just like it's out the window with them, because part of the disability is it's like social emotional, um so they're very inappropriate, they're very disrespectful, they're like, but they're also like in your face, like they call you out, they would just like they have no fear, right? And they have no like shame, they speak up, they stand up for themselves, they will tell you like why that's bullshit, and they'll say those words, and they'll like tell you why, and usually they're right, like there's like what they say to people is like true, but again, we're trying to get them to like, you can say those things, but like you can say that in a different way, what's appropriate, right? Like in this society, right? Because we don't want them to get in trouble or to like go to jail, and because they have the worst, like, and so in special education they have the worst outcomes, like that's why they drop out at higher rates, they like become incarcerated at higher rates. So it's a lot, right? And so I found this like group of kids that are like, okay, this is the kind of students I want to work with. Like this is what I want to teach, and I teach them my history, and they just they like run with it. Like they would they will tell people like, this is my land, this is not your land. Like I mean, like it's like a beautiful thing, because they stand for themselves. They don't like they have no fear, they have no shame, and so that just really like, in order for me to like advocate for them and to like be on their side, where people will like listen to me, because even though I have the experience and I have like the knowledge to work with them, like because I didn't have that credential, right? Like they were like my word, my input, my opinion was not like valid, and it was just kind of interesting, where like I'll say things like, no, like that's not gonna work, that's not gonna like that's not gonna be the solution, and then like things become worse, and then the psychologist like, yeah, you're right, like you like that, whatever happened, you said that was gonna happen, that's what happened, right? And because I didn't have like that degree, like people were like, people don't listen. So after that, whatever, I got my I started taking classes, because I had to, so I decided to go for my credential, right? And you have to take all these prereqs and to like apply, and I'll take all these tests to be a teacher. It's a lot of work to be a teacher in California, and I think that's part of the reason why I don't want to do it, because like there's a lot of work for like like our it's the pay is not even that great to be doing all these things, and so yeah, so I just finished my credential like literally like 2 weeks ago. My graduation was yesterday, but it was all virtual, so it didn't really. Thank you.
Congratulations.
So it didn't really matter, but it's like all was online, so I couldn't go in person. But well, yeah, I mean, and also my first group of students also graduated yesterday, so that was pretty cool. Again, I feel like this is the right path. Like I feel like this is where I need to be. You know, like I even told a teacher that was working with them. He was like, oh, he's like, I don't feel fulfilled here. Like I don't. These kids don't try. They don't like want. They don't want to do like their work academically. They don't want to like do anything, right? And I was like, well, these kids are here because they're not like, yes, they might need help with academics, but most of them are pretty capable. Some of them are like extremely smart, but they're not here for that. They're here because they're emotional and their social issues, and like we need to like get them in a better state of mind, so then they could do the academics, right? Like if they're depressed or they're angry, they have trauma, like like who cares about numbers and writing, and like because we have bigger things that these kids are worrying about. So we need to get them to that point where like how to manage their emotions, how to like just how to like function, and how to express themselves in a healthy way without destroying the classroom for an hour, right? So it's like we have other things to work on than like fractions or writing a paragraph or whatever. Because I mean, those kids, they're capable. Like they're gonna get it, right? But we have to get them to that point where where like kids, my students now that are 18, 19, they're like, yeah, like I cry because if I don't cry, I become destructive, or crying's good for me because it would, I feel better afterward. And these kids were like, oh, I don't cry. When they were like 13, 14, like 13, 12, oh, I don't cry. I'm a man. I don't do those things. And I'm like, it's okay to cry. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to express yourselves. And, so see them now talking about it and like reaffirming each other and like, encouraging each other, like, oh, oh, like, yeah, like you're in a safe space, like saying those language, like using that language to each other. And I was like, wow, like that's like the point. Like we want them to be like young, healthy, and most of them, we have mostly boys, like young, healthy men where they could just communicate with each other and like be open and be like, yeah, like it's like, yeah, go ahead, cry, like, or like we're here for you, like it's all good. I'm just, it's like, wow, like like men in my generation, like I'm in my 30s, like we have a hard time doing that. Like I think we're barely maybe getting there. Like we're barely like getting it, and some maybe not everyone get it, but to see like 18-year-old, 19-year-olds like affirming each other and encouraging each other and just like, yeah, like it's okay, like you're like you're safe here with us, right? I'm just like, wow, like that's like the most beautiful thing I can like witness, right? And so yeah, just I'm still doing that. So I'm working with the youth. I still like still I haven't participated in activism much. I mean, I've been in like Black Lives Matter protests in Santa Ana a few times that we have them. So yeah, I mean, activism is still going to be there. Obviously, education is still going to be there. So I mean, I think regardless if I was in the movement or not, like I think this would have been like my path anyways. Like I mean, unlike Citlalli, like they weren't like holding me back from anything. They weren't like telling me don't go to school, don't like do that. And I think, I mean, honestly, I mean, I'm sure she knows, but I'm sure like they saw like her power, her potential, and like in the movement. And so if she took a break, it's like, well, what's gonna get done, right? Like nothing. So they really needed her to like do all these things. So as a result, they had to like suppress her and like suppress her like other interests and ambitions, because if they lose her, then it's like that's gonna get done, right? So I didn't like really have those like issues where like don't do that, don't go to school, don't do this, like focus more, give us more money. Like that was like I didn't have those issues. But um so yeah, so I think regardless if I was in or not, I would have still been doing what I was gonna be doing anyways.
Yeah, and I remember you would post stuff about your experiences with the kids, and the director would tell you, "Don't do that. Like you're gonna get in trouble. Like
Oh
you shouldn't
yeah.
be teaching the kids that." But it's like you've always had that love for the kids, and people don't understand that, And it's like, and I would notice that. So it was like, I'm just glad that
Forgot
that
about
did, yeah, that didn't derail. You know what I mean? That didn't
Yeah,
demoralize you enough to be like, oh, he's right. Like I'm
yeah.
glad you didn't let that get to you.
See, I blocked it out. I forgot.
Good. No, as far as my update, I'll be honest, like it was really hard for me to make it public, the statement that I wrote, because I was so used to protecting the organization, protecting the director. I was just like, no, like if I do this, white supremacy is gonna win. Like, but I was like, no, like I have a responsibility to my people. If I can come out here on camera and talk about all white supremacy and not Hispanic Latino, like when shit hits the fan, then I should be able to face my community and tell them exactly what happened. And I did in that written testimony. But after I left the organization, it took me a while to heal from that, because I was like, and as an activist, my elder for 20 years, like I was so used to asking for permission, getting everything approved. Is this okay? Do you agree with this? Is not agree? Like my whole life was always up to someone else's, to validate. It was someone else's. I let that power go, right? I gave that power to somebody to validate me, to say yes or no to what I was doing. And so it's taking me a while to detox from that and to trust myself and say, you know what, you learned a lot. And it's like, as much credit as I do give the organization, I have to give myself credit, because I am, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, I learned to separate the Mexica movement from the director. Like, I just learned to deal with the trauma that way, because there was no way I could be there and think that he represented the movement. So I was always like, no, he's not perfect, but the movement's bigger than him. And that's how I got by. But once I left, I realized you know, even when I would write something, I would have his voice in my head, like, that's wrong. You're not, you know, like that's people are not gonna get it. This is not like I had his voice like for a long time, just there, like, because I would always be judged, policed, what I wore, what I said, everything was under a microscope 24/7. So for me to heal from that, for me to to gain my autonomy back and to gain my control back, it took me a while. And so after I left the organization, you know, I didn't participate with anybody else. And it's funny because a lot of people, when I left the organization, a lot of people were like, come join us and be this and be the spokesperson here and be that. And I was like, oh, hell no. Like, I was like, like, you know, I appreciate them reaching out to me, but I was just like, like, I took me like, I was in this bad relationship for 20 years. Like, I need a detox. I need to be on my own for a while, you know, like, and so I did, like, I would focus on my education. You know, I have a loving husband, I have a loving family and friends, you know, and warrior friends that supported me. And I finished my master's degree with highest honors. My poetry book is being used in high schools and universities nationwide. You know, that's been beautiful to witness. And little by little, you know, I also finished a teaching for a community college internship. And I like my social media presence. Like, I continue making videos on YouTube. I've continued to be on Instagram. I started teaching a class for free on YouTube last year. It's called Eat to Colonize. And that in itself, like, to me, that was a, for my own self, I think teaching a class on YouTube for free is very, to me, is very healing, because it made me feel like, wow, like I'm doing everything I've always wanted to do, and I'm not attached to an organization. And it felt weird at first not to be attached to like a collective, because I was so used to be part of the Mexican movement. But finding my own voice again and finding my autonomy and honoring my own, like my own, you know, worth, like that in itself is a huge accomplishment. So since I left the organization, I finished, like I said, with highest honors my master's degree in history. I'm teaching a Need to Colonize course. I'm on my way to becoming a professor. We're working, you didn't mention it, but we're working on a radio project, and we're both hosts on a radio project, which you will listen to hopefully soon. So I'm really excited about that. We're both radio hosts. And one more thing. Oh yeah, so I'm working on my second book, and it's gonna be more vulnerable, more open about. That's another thing. Like, being in the organization, I was always told, don't share your traumas, don't talk about the bad things you went through. Like, people don't want to hear that. Like, you're gonna seem weak. You know, you don't want to talk about that. So I was like, now that I'm free from that, I was like, no, there's a lot of power in our story. There's a lot of power in our vulnerability. Being vulnerable is not weak. Being vulnerable is actually very courageous. And so my poetry book, my new one, is very vulnerable. You know, I talk about losing my grandmother. I talk about being a mother. I talk about a lot of things. And also another update is that I am now a mother. You know, I am now a mother to a beautiful baby boy. And that in itself, like, being in an organization for 20 years, you know, that told me, like, I was basically expected to be a nun. You know, like, the director didn't want me to date, they didn't want me to have boyfriends, they didn't want me to have girlfriends, they didn't want, like, nothing. So sometimes I wonder, like, if having a baby, right, like, now that I have a child, like, I'm like, wow, did that thinking ooh, like, rob me from that desire to be a mother? Because I don't know, like, it's something that I think about, because I'm like, wow, like, maybe that I could have been a mother sooner, but because I was like, so like, no, I had to live my life this way and I had to live up to these standards. Like, did I rob myself of feeling this joy as a mother that's so beautiful, like, earlier, right? And so there's just so many beautiful things that are happening. And also, too, with social media, I'm meeting so many people. Like, as soon as I left the organization, like, I met so many wonderful warriors, so many beautiful people out there that I was not allowed to talk to and not allowed to have met before. And I'm very grateful for that new community, especially the youth. Like, I continue speaking at events, at high schools, universities. I'm doing collaborations. And I would say the biggest update, you know, and I wanted to make sure I state this in this video, that I no longer use the term Nican. And for all of you, you see all my videos, it's all like Mexica Movement, Nican Tlaca, Mexica Movement, Nican Tlaca. And I props to people who use it, but I myself, in my recent learning, I've had the great privilege of working with and learning with Huitzilyolotl. They're one of the teachers from speaknahuatl.com. And I learned, like Nican Tlaca was proper in 16th century classical Nahuatl in a particular concept. But there's other terms that our people speak. Like Nahuatl is it's a live language. Like it's a living language, right? And so I've learned that it's like I'd rather try to use concepts that are used by our people today, that are accessible, learned, and used already, instead of reviving a concept that, even though it came from a good intention, right, pan-indigenous way to call our people, I don't feel comfortable using it anymore. So now, I mean, I'm not looking for a substitute term. I just say indigenous or native. And so that's one of the biggest, growth that I've had. Like my recent learning is that in learning, I'm always looking for better ways to explain things, to teach. I'm always learning myself. So that's one of the things that recently that I'm learning and saying, no, well, I used to use Nican Tlaca, but now I know better. So now I see it differently, and this is why. And so that just goes to show you, like, when we're decolonizing, when we're learning our history, like, sometimes we're going to change. Like, if you see my videos 10 years ago, the same person, but I'm very different when it comes to my positions and my politics in other areas. And so with this, I do want to wrap up and just to say we're doing this because, as a historian myself, the power of conserving history, because this is historical. We were part of a historical movement, and we participated, we gave so much of ourselves, but we are still here. We're still warriors for our people, and that's not going to dent who we are. We've continued our contributions, and we're still going to contribute historically to our people's liberation. And I just want to let you know, if anyone's ever in these organizations or are dealing with people that are toxic like this, that are gaslighting you, that are caught up with elitism, that are being machistas, that are power tripping, you have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to speak out. You have the right to remove yourself from those situations. You do not have to deal with anyone's bullshit just because you agree with the same thing, or just because you're on the same path of decolonization. It could be very toxic. And I hope that us, in sharing our stories and sharing why we left, and of course we share the positive things, we hope it helps somebody feel empowered to be vigilant, right? And I think ultimately, being there for 20 years and now continuing my growth, I feel a lot more wiser. I feel a lot more confident, even more after surviving what I went through. I feel even more stronger. I feel even more unapologetic. I feel even more committed to what I'm here to do. And to me, it's to share knowledge, to share our history, to share with people that don't know, to share with people who care. And with that, any last words you want to say on this very long, but long overdue, video?
Yeah, really quick. It's just interesting because even like on TikTok, there's like these people talking about Mexica Movement like out of nowhere, and some of them were like giving their experience. And I'm like, well, I don't think you ever remember. I was like, I don't remember seeing you, or maybe you won't remember, um, but my point is, if you just want to like, if you have any questions, I mean, I don't know. I know that there's like they're still out there. Like there's people talking about them still, even on TikTok, which I was kind of like surprised. So I mean, you can reach out to me like anytime, like if you have questions or if you hear rumors. I mean, I could answer them. We can answer them to the best of our knowledge.
We'll put a video description on our social media handles.
Yeah, because I know like, I mean, I don't know. I'm hearing now. I'm hearing things about like only the priest now in Mexico, and I don't know, right? But if you just want to like ask me like my experience or just more details, and you could ask me. But yeah, that's about it.
So thank you for listening to this video. Like I said, it's long overdue. We wanted to share it with our people because it is historical, what we are doing. And we owe it to our community, to our people, to be transparent. And for history, this needs to be known. This needs to be known. These are the challenges that we faced. We overcame them. And now we're doing our work in the way that we are finding fruitful, satisfying, and still decolonizing, still indigenizing. And like you're saying, we have the statements under this video, in this video description. I'm going to have Huitzilyolotl social media handles. You can find me on TikTok. Thanks to Huitzilyolotl, who also pushed me to be on TikTok. My little sisters on Facebook, YouTube. So yeah, this is why. This is part of history. This is how we hopefully transform, and hopefully for the next generation of warriors, I hope and honor your growth. And I'm really excited to see all the youth, right, that are really embracing this message of decolonization. And I want you to be very vigilant and to always protect yourself, and to never, never think that someone's opinion is bigger than your own opinion of yourself. That is my lesson. Those are harsh lessons that I had to learn, but I'm here, I'm strong, and we're continuing with our lives. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Huitzilyolotl, for sharing your story too.
You're welcome.
White supremacy is kicking and alive, keeping us from truth and vision from our eyes, keeping us from truth and vision from our eyes. Indigenous movement, we're lighting up the torches, tired of genocide, our liberation day approaches.